Postgres is a very powerful relational database and is likely the right choice for most of the projects that you're building. But there are certain use cases that you probably would want to use a more specialized database for that use case. And one of those is, for example, counting the views on your website. Now, for this, Redis is a great example. It's an in-memory key value store, and it's specifically designed for ingesting a lot of data in real time very quickly. And so that is something that we can use. And Upstash is a provider of Redis as a serverless option. So we actually have an example here of using Upstash Redis with Supabase functions, and we're going to use that to build a regional counter, because as you know, Supabase Edge Functions are deployed all around the world, and we can count each region where our function is viewed, and we can just count that up and store that in Redis in Upstash. So let's go ahead and in our project, so here in our Edgy Edge Functions, we're going to create a new Supabase function. So we're going to say Supabase functions new, and we're going to call it Upstash Redis counter. So let's create that. And so now here we have our new function. And then what we can do is actually we can later just come and copy this code and look through it. But first of all, we'll need to create a Redis database. So we can do this in the Upstash console. So we're going to create a new database here. We're going to create it as a global one. We need to select a primary region. We can just use US East here, and then select a read region, Asia here, Singapore, and we'll just create it like this for now, and we call it Super Counter. And so now what we can do is we can go here to our REST API. So that's what we'll be using from the Supabase Edge Functions. And we can go to .env, and we can just copy that here over to our project. So in our project, let's actually create a global .env file, .env, to make sure that you're not committing this to source control. So this is something you want to have in your git ignore. And then in your .env, we paste in our details. So that's the Upstash Redis REST URL and the Redis REST token. Now we give that save, come back to our function. Now we can go ahead and we can look at the actual code. So we have our new function, Upstash Redis counter, already installed, and then we're going to just copy this and run through it from there. So let's go ahead, remove all this and paste in our example. We are using here an import map. So actually we will here get our dependency. So the serve we already have in our import map as standard serve. We can update this to version 177. That's the latest version. And then actually we get here a note that we can change this to the import here. And then as well, we're going to take Redis, put that into our import map. We'll just say Redis, and we'll just paste that in here. And so now again in our project, we'll also get here the proposal to update that to Redis. Great. And then we're just saying Upstash counter Redis up and running. So here we're getting our details, our environment variables from our .env file to initialize our Redis client. And then we have a Deno region. So this is only available, this environment variable, when the function is deployed. So we're checking here if we have a Deno region, then we're using the Deno region. Otherwise, we're just using a local host because we're serving it locally. And we're using a data structure here called a hash. So the hash we can store, we can give it a name. So it's our super edge counter. And then there are parameters on, so key value parameters on our hash. And there is a handy method called the hash increment by. And so we're just going to increment our Deno region value by 1, otherwise the localhost value by 1. And then what we want is we want to get all the values out, so we can use the Redis hGetAll from our super edge counter. And then here we're just doing some JavaScript manipulation of the entries. So first of all, we're sorting our entries from descending order, so the highest value at the top. And then we're reducing that just to have a total that we can calculate. And then we're just putting the regions into our result. The total is starting from 0. Our regions are just an empty object, and then we're passing our regions in there. And then lastly, if everything went well, we're just going to return our counters with a status 200. Marvelous. So now let's actually spin this up. We can spin this up locally. We can say Supabase functions serve. First of all, important, we need to say Supabase start. For me, it's already up and running, but that's important for you. If it's not yet, then we say Supabase functions serve. And so since CLI version 1.38.6, we don't need to provide the function name anymore. We can serve all our functions in our project at the same time. And so we just need to say no verify JWT. We want this to be accessible publicly on the web. And then we need to provide our .env file. And that is at Supabase and then .env. And so there we go. We can go ahead. We can serve our Supabase functions. And now our routing. So when we're serving all our functions, it's just the name of our function folder. So that's the Upstash Redis counter here. And so now we can just go to our localhost 54321 functions v1, and we'll say Upstash Redis counter. And now the first time around, it's going to take a while because it's downloading all of the dependencies that we don't have previously cached. So that's the difference with Deno. We're not running any installation script, but rather otherwise, when the function is run for the first time, we're caching the dependencies. And so now we can see here, we have a total of 1. Our regions are local host. So let's spin this a couple times. We can see, okay, that is being updated here. So that is working, and in Upstash as well, we have this now persisted to our Upstash account. So lovely, that is working locally. So let's go ahead and actually deploy this function. So we can say Supabase functions deploy. We want to deploy our Upstash Redis counter, and we want to say no verify JWT. So we're now bundling our function and uploading it, deploying it. One thing, we need to set our secrets as well. So we can say Supabase secrets set. We can provide the .env file flag. And again, we can say our Supabase.env. And now we're setting all the secrets from our .env file to be available on our account. Now let's go ahead and look at our function deployment. So our deployment is active here. We can copy this. And so now we should have our localhost region, as well as we can see AWS AP Southeast Asia 1 because I'm here in Singapore. And so now we're getting this counter updated. If we were to use a VPN, we could then also get some more regions, or we could share the link with some of our friends. So there we are. This is how we can use Upstash Redis within our Supabase Edge Functions for some specific use cases, ingesting real-time data, for example, like our view counter here. Thanks so much for tuning in, and see you next time.